Earlier this week, the series One Marvelous Scene debuted, a collaboration between some of the biggest video essayists on YouTube, to prepare for Avengers Endgame, which can honestly be said without exaggeration to be the biggest movie release in film history. While many of these channels have focused on the interplay between the Avengers in scenes with many characters, or the sophisticated use of tension in smaller moments, the scene I've chosen is unique in how much it communicates through so little, by putting its perspective character off-screen much of the time, and relying on our knowledge of his past development to carry the emotional weight.
I should have stayed on the bus.
Although this scene is centered around one very brief moment, this moment does so much to communicate the meaning behind not just Infinity War, but the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like a lot of Infinity War, this scene is visually dark, yet still holds to Marvel's style of lighthearted fun in the face of tremendous opposition.
Wow, you are a seriously loyal piece of outerwear, aren't you?
Yeah, speaking of loyalty,
What the?
I know what you're gonna say.
You should not be here.
I was gonna go home.
I don't wanna hear
but
it.
it was such a long way down, and I just thought about shooting.
And now I
leg.
gotta hear
Kind
it.
of stuck to the side of the ship, and this suit is ridiculously intuitive, by the way. So, if anything, it's kind of your fault that I'm here.
What did you just say?
I take that back. And now I'm here in space.
Yeah, right where I didn't want you to be. This isn't Coney Island. This isn't field trip. This is a one-way ticket. You hear me?
It's the way this scene turns the usual Marvel formula on its head that's indicative of what it's trying to communicate. Since 2008, Tony Stark has been the headliner for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. His characteristic wit and humor has kept us going through some of the Avengers' darkest outings, and set the tone for every Marvel film since his debut. Yet since Age of Ultron, Tony has been a changed man. He's haunted by his failures, and by the shadow of greater threats which only he knows about. He's suffered through PTSD from the Battle of New York, and had a dissociated relationship with Pepper Potts,
He was just...
You mean you?
Well, yeah, I just mean we were just hosting you.
the only person who was ever capable of pulling him away from his responsibility or flamboyant ego, and into the humble, normal life he craves deep down. One of the first things we notice when Tony appears on screen in last year's Avengers film is that he is visibly haunted. His eyes are sunken, and he seems to frantically pursue anything that might lead him back to the stability he wants with Pepper.
Apropos of that, last night, I dreamt we had a kid. So real.
Going into this scene on the ship, there's a lot of exposition as the team debates what course of action to take, but Tony is not the man we once knew and relied on for levity. He goes toe-to-toe with Doctor Strange, the most emotionally distant character in the entire MCU, yet seems to have forgotten who he is, forgotten the core that made us fall in love with him so many years ago. Peter Parker, on the other hand, the character we're supposed to empathize with most in this scene,
Okay, we haven't officially met. Cool.
who has just come off of his first outing in a largely comedic film, is relegated to the sidelines.
I'm back up.
No, you're still awake. The adults are talking.
In a way, Tony is shunning the embodiment of his past self in favor of a darker, more serious approach to Thanos' new threat. Through the course of Peter's involvement in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, his entire arc has revolved around one theme:
Good
acceptance.
job. Stay down.
I'm good, I'm fine.
Stay down.
No, it's good. I gotta get him
You're
back.
going home or I'll call Aunt May. You're done.
Peter has always known his own worth, yet even at the level of his high school, he was an outsider, accepted not even by his peers.
Sup, Penis Parker?
Through Civil War and Homecoming, there are so many moments where his potential is quashed by external forces that aren't able to see what he's truly capable of.
Mr. Stark, you didn't have to come all the way out here. I had that. I was fine.
Oh, I'm not here.
Peter is a black sheep who hasn't really fit in anywhere. There's an interesting analog to be drawn between the role Peter plays alongside the legendary Avengers and the position of young millennials navigating a world that has been built and run by previous generations.
You're young. You don't understand how the world works.
There's a ton of other subsystems in here. But they're all disabled by the training wheels protocol.
This is, of course, the youngest on-screen Peter Parker we've seen,
Him treating me like a kid all the time.
and each of his appearances in the MCU plays off of this to emphasize his relationship with older generations.
You got hard, kid. Where you from?
Queens.
Brooklyn.
Hey guys, you ever seen that really old movie? Empire Strikes Back?
Jesus, Tony, how old is this
I
guy?
don't know. I didn't carbon date him. He's on the young side.
His desire to be acknowledged and accepted by them.
If you even cared, you'd actually be here.
Everyone else said I was crazy to recruit a 14-year-old kid.
I'm 15.
No, this is where you zip it, all right? The adult is talking.
and their inability to see his potential.
I just wanted to be like you.
And I wanted you to be better.
But just as younger generations know they must assume the mantle passed on from their parents' generation, Peter knows that eventually, with or without their acceptance, he will soon be called upon to make choices that determine the fate of society. Just as we all have roles to play in the betterment of our world as it transitions from generation to generation, Peter exemplifies this dynamic, the passing of the torch from one generation to the next. Just as Marvel itself has changed from phase to phase, we know that growth will come, that things are always getting better. Every moment when the Avengers theme has played in the past 7 years has signified a moment of great change, when the team has overcome their differences and learned to work together. When the status quo is shifted,
Thanos is coming. He's coming.
Who?
or when new voices are heard. Betterment can only be achieved by moving forward, and arguably the most important element at play in Infinity War, and this scene in particular, is how Tony Stark gradually, if reluctantly, opens his eyes to the potential of the next generation.
Kid, you're an Avenger now.
Earlier this week, I learned about the series One Marvelous Scene, a collaboration between some of the biggest film and pop culture channels on YouTube, to prepare for Endgame. But with the launch of the film less than 3 days away, I was faced with an enormous challenge. Could I write, edit, and release a video essay in such a short time? Approaching this challenge, it was hard not to feel like the underdog in a world of big hitters. Many of these channels have been around for years, have hundreds of thousands of followers, big sponsors, and impressive funding, while I'm editing on an old computer with inadequate software and recording audio in my closet. In this way, it was impossible not to draw parallels between Spider-Man and his relationship with the Avengers going into Infinity War,
Captain? Big fan?
so I rolled with it. Big shout out to all my patrons on Patreon and to all my new subscribers. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss another video. And if you'd like to support my work, check out my newly launched Patreon page, link in the description. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you in the next video.